Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December regular meeting for the Board of Finance. Thanks to Simsbury Community Media for filming and Mark Bernstein, who is remote and doing this tonight. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On tonight's agenda, we have our quarterly financial report and some tri-board budget preparation stuff. I just want to congratulate Amy as the quarterly reports progress. They're getting better and better every time, especially the fiscal notes. I thought those were really helpful this time around. And it reminds us it is a work in progress, so if there is more information or we want to see it in a different format, we can adjust that going forward as well. So we'll begin with the director's report, and Amy, why don't you get us started with that?
So you have your new listing of your approved supplemental appropriations. There's been nothing added since the last meeting where it was discussed in length about the 3% rule. So I won't go through any of those. The grants and donations, just the ones that were subsequently approved between the time frame of October and November. And then the last new item on there is the referendum mailer. This was approved at the Board of Selectmen meeting with some minor changes last night, and is still pending the town attorney and the SEEC approval. So once those approvals are received, we'll let you know on a date as to when the anticipated mailer will be released.
Are there any comments?
Just one tiny one on the grants and donations. It talks about donations and grant applications, but it's really grant awards, right?
No, these are applications.
Oh, these have not been awarded yet?
Some of them might have been, like the donations are, but ones that, let me see if there's any ones here. Like the Historic Preservation Restoration Fund grant, up to $200,000, that has not been awarded yet.
Okay, so that's pending. And I see that it's just October through November. These are then applications. Are there other applications that are pending, grant applications?
So I just take them from the Board of Selectmen's report at their meeting. So the October to November is the ones that they've approved at their meeting to be executed, and we can apply for the grant and then execute it if we are awarded the grant. But there hasn't been any, I don't go back around and circle back to which ones have been approved. It's just these are the ones on the list to keep a lookout for as to what could be coming down the pike.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking is, are there any other that are pending?
I'd have to look back at all the other ones that we applied for.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it if you can do that.
Sure.
Maybe if we could keep an Excel spreadsheet and track applications and awards, and so we can get an idea of time and when we should budget for
Right.
them. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I can turn it into a worksheet to be posted.
Yeah, thank you.
Posted into here.
Thank you. Amy, at our previous meeting, we had talked about bringing the sewer group in to give just a separate budget presentation since we've never focused on that. Do you have any thoughts on when we could schedule that?
I'm open. Did you want to do it?
Maybe in February?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I believe Tony's budget is the first one approved by his commission. So maybe we do it right after that. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay.
That'd be great. And for future reports, the supplementals is helpful, but although we are on the Board of Finance, it would be helpful if you totaled them so we know when we're, thank you. Are there any other comments on the
No.
financial? Okay. Amy, we'll start with the quarterly. And Amy, I'm just going to ask you to go slow and pause as we go through the different pages and give us a chance to ask questions. But why don't we begin with that? And we'll start with, how is the state of the town?
So we're only through September as of this report, so everything's great. We have plenty of money. So I'll start on the general fund. I'll start on the revenue side. So if you look at all the way at the bottom of your general fund revenue sheet, you'll see that we have about $60,800,000 in revenues to date as of September 30th, 2020. That is about 52.88% of the budget to date. This is consistent with the prior year, where we were at about 51.15% of the budget to date. So nothing major from year to year. A couple of items I did want to point out. You can see in this column all the way to the right under the projected, that total projected is excess in budget of about $648,000. And if you scroll up, you'll see that there's a few reasons for this. So this $500,000 variance, as you all are aware, and I mention quite frequently, this is the tax collection rate. So this is an anticipated increase in our revenue from year to year as we budget for it. Moving down to this $120,000, you'll see that these overage in the revenue relates to the finance department, and this is just the current year increase in our interest rates. So we had done a very modest budget for our interest rates last year because they were tanking, and now as we start to come out of that and interest rates rise again, we're seeing the benefits of that.
So Amy, that will be a potential offset to expenditure increases once we go into the 2024 budget.
Correct.
So Amy, I have a question on the revenue, if I may. On your first dot point on the summary, it talks about that we have increased revenues in the current year compared to the prior year. I think it's meant to be that we are getting 156,000 more compared to the prior year. I don't see the 156,000. I was looking for it on the next page. Like, where is that?
I think 156 is the last year's.
The building department is seeing increased permit revenues in the current year compared
Yeah.
to the prior 56,281 resulting from the Upper Locker dormitory.
Is that first dot point on your summary?
So that
Oh,
would that be
I'm
in
sorry,
the,
the written summary.
Yeah.
would that be in the building department?
Well, it talks about there's a large spiking in the building department on page 5 as well, but I just don't see where.
Yeah, so what I'm referring
156.
to here is if you look at the building department, I'll show you up here too. If you look at the building department last year, we had $196,000 as of September 2021. And as of September 2022, we have a little over $350,000.
So that's the variance.
Oh, okay, so I just
Right.
haven't
Yeah.
done the
We were
math
at
there.
about
Okay.
23% of budget last year, and this year we're almost at
All
about
right.
50% of budget.
Thank you. So the difference between those numbers is 156.
Any other questions on revenue? Okay. So on the expenditure side, these are mostly consistent with one another, but if we'll go all the way down to the bottom of the page, and you can see we spent about $24,769,000 to date as of the end of September 2022. This is about 21.49% of our total budget. And again, pretty consistent with the prior year. Prior year, we had spent about 22.52% of our budget. Just quickly, the majority of the variances that you'll see are actually related to the CSEA union contracts. They were settled, payouts were made in July. However, our supplemental budget appropriations were only approved in October as part of our year-end closeout. So you'll see that there's higher spend in the current year compared to the prior year. And then once in October, those adjustments and supplementals are booked. And then you will see that as they are booked, the percent spent will adjust accordingly.
Amy, before you turn, can you talk about the Economic Development Commission and you had the fiscal year 21 was not rolled over to 22 and 23, so that would have required an action by our board. Did we vote to do that, and what is that?
So yes and no. So this was done at the end of fiscal year 19, I believe, for an EDC marketing materials project. And then there was a very small amount spent, about $4,000 out of this project back in the year of the appropriation. And then the remainder, it looks like it was spent this year. But we're not expecting to exceed our budget this year. So until we're going to go over budget by that $12,000, we don't need a supplemental.
So why it was approved in fiscal year 19?
It was fiscal year 19 year-end savings, so the project would have been started in fiscal year 20.
And it was for materials?
Marketing materials. It was a
Yeah,
year-end
so
request.
I have a little bit of a concern that it was approved in 2020 and not spent for almost 3 years at this point. And then was this approved as part of the operating budget or as a capital project?
Operating.
So it would have returned to the general fund without action on our part if it was not spent.
Right.
So it doesn't exist.
I
It
mean,
was never sent back.
Yeah.
Pardon?
the funds in that
back.
year were sent back. Yeah. So fiscal year 20, the funds were sent back. I can't speak to the status of the project. I can follow up on that and why it took so long to spend. But I know the project closeout this year is causing the overage for the 12,000.
But the money that wasn't spent as of 2020 should have reverted back to the general fund.
Right, it should have. So theoretically, when we did our conversion over from Finance Plus to Munis, there was an open purchase order, which had it stayed in Finance Plus, it would have rolled forward and we wouldn't have lost track of it. But because we had to close out those purchase orders and we started a new accounting system in Munis, it looks like those are one of the ones that got lost and that money did not stay rolled forward.
So no one ever approved this expenditure, is that what I'm hearing?
Maybe not for the specific usage, but
I understand it's an error. It should have been approved as part of an
That's
encumbrance.
the point.
right. But there's also things in the budget too that, we say we're going to spend, money on, say, file folders, and then we spend money on pens. So as long as the budget doesn't go over, we're okay. So that's a similar situation that we're in now for the 12,000.
I'm a little confused. Is there an absolute amount or a percentage amount that just procedurally it doesn't come back to the Board of Finance for approval?
So anything needs to go back to the Board of Finance for the operating budget if we're going to overspend the budget in total. If we're not going to overspend the budget in total, it doesn't need to come back.
So a little caveat on that, it does need to come back if they overspend the departmental budget, because then it needs to be a transfer.
Right, so that's at the end of the year, the Board of Selectmen will do transfers between the funds.
The Board of Selectmen does, but the Board of Finance wants to know about them before the end of the year, because technically there's no spending without an appropriation, so you can't exceed the departmental budget. So transfers have to be approved by both boards and not at the end of the year for us.
But we have the appropriation.
You don't if you've exceeded the departmental budget. You could,
That's what I'm getting at.
yeah. You can do, the way our transfers work is transfers within a department, we don't care.
Right.
That's done by the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
But transfers between departments need a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen and approval by the Board of Finance, and they need to be done in advance, not after the fact.
And it's not after a certain threshold.
No.
It's any amount.
It's any amount.
So we've always done that as part of year end, so that's a change.
No, I don't think so,
I've
but
never brought a transfer request unless it was at the year end, because at year end, we know which departments are under and which departments are over.
so last year when we closed, I did ask Maria and she said there were no departments were over, so that's why it wasn't brought. It's very rare that a department exceeds their budget.
Okay, I can look.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, were the funds spent for what they were appropriated for?
Yes.
What they were originally appropriated for, they were not appropriated in 2021, 22.
No, I know that's
Okay.
definitely a technicality, but yeah.
Yes and no.
I don't know. My mind goes immediately towards the 350th, but I don't know if because that never really happened, right? Because of COVID. So
Well, they did some things. 350th.
Yeah.
Committee. They did do some things.
I guess my bigger question is, what kind of Economic Development Commission spend of over $12,000 again? What was it?
65.
It has to be something that we've all heard about. Seems like.
Yeah, it was a marketing materials.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to spend $12,000 on.
Yeah, but
somebody-
Simsbury Main Street does a lot of that as well. Like, so okay.
Design
I'll just
and
accept it
printing
as
and all
is.
that. Adds up.
It would be helpful to understand what that money was spent since it was approved
I mean, I
years ago.
can't
Was the
imagine the
expenditure-
EDC spending $64,000 a year.
Well, 50 of that goes to Main Street. It's just their,
Oh, so Main Street is in that then?
yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's 55 now, isn't it?
I don't know.
I know they.
That makes a little more sense.
Yes,
That
I
makes
think-
more sense to
Yes,
me
yes,
then.
yes, yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on the expenditures? Any other questions?
Are you gonna go over the summary that you did of, the health insurance fund and, okay. Just wanna know what was the accounting change?
Before we go on, the 18,000, that's the estimated balance, and where are we currently on our coverage? For the fund balance, 722 was 17.9, so we're anticipating we'll have more.
Sorry, where are you?
Right, so,
Very bottom.
what
of
page?
18 million.
Yes,
yeah, so we ended the year with 17,900,000 in fund balance. And then between the excess revenues that I went over and the small $22,000, which will likely clear itself, we'd have an estimated 18,360,000 or 15.93% of the operating budget.
so what was the 17,919, what was that percent of fund balance?
I don't know, I'd have to go back and look. But I believe that was after you all did the transfer and the year-end transfers. I think we had it at, 15.5?
That makes sense. All right. So we're still on track to have a little bit better, so hopefully be able to transfer some to capital reserves. Okay.
Fingers crossed. Do you all have any questions on the Simsbury Farms Fund, or you just want me to get to the health insurance fund?
Yeah.
Okay. Health insurance it is. All right, so with the health insurance fund. So the glaring change here is our premiums. So this time last year, we had about 3.7 million in premiums, and this year we have 915,000. So there is no financial impact here. It is zero at the end of the year. It's just how we're bringing it into the fund. So for our town employees, we're 12-month employees, and every month we take money from everybody's paychecks and we give it to our internal service fund, and there's no issue. On the school side, they're 10-month employees, so we take money from them out of 10 months of the year, put it into the internal service fund. When the internal service fund was insolvent, we were doing estimates from the Board of Education on the amount of money that we would take from them every month instead of what was actually happening over 10 months. So we would do estimates for the 12-month period, and then at the end of the year, we would do a true up as to what should have gone into the fund. And the only reason that we did that was for cash flow purposes. So now that this fund is in a healthy position, we no longer need to do that. So we reverted back to a less time-consuming way of doing it, and we take the money over 10 months. So essentially, we take more money over 10 months instead of taking less money over 12 months.
I always thought the teachers had a choice of getting paid 10 months or 12 months.
They have a couple of choices. It's not 10 or 12, but they can do 10 months with a balloon payment, or they could do 10 months with their full salary. But they don't have a choice between 10 and 12. But there are
okay.
some 12-month employees on that side.
Yeah.
So Amy, projecting into next year, 2024, with the 23% reserve, we are not probably going to be able to tap that to help offset health increases?
No, I wouldn't recommend it, since Lockton always tells us it's about 20-25% of expected claims, and we're still in a good place to be, but we are in that range. We're not over it, so I wouldn't utilize reserves.
That's one bucket we won't have.
Any other questions on any other funds? That's all I have for highlights.
Hold on. We had discussed at our previous meeting, the sewer use fund doing a fund balance policy for August consideration, so we'll keep that on the list of things to do also for Simsbury Farms, because they're both have healthy reserves, and we should probably have a policy on how much is too much and how much is too little.
Yeah, that was something that struck me, was looking at the sewer use fund. It's $213,000 in there, and there were no expenses last year and none seemingly planned for either of the last 2 years. So
Sewer use or sewer assessment?
sewer assessment fund.
Right. So sewer assessment actually had quite a significant surplus last year. They actually took about 1.2 million out of that fund to utilize for capital. But Tony has a very good handle on his fund balance, his reserves, and what the anticipated use is. So when he comes to present, he can
Can
give
you
you that.
remind me the difference between the sewer use and the sewer assessment?
I knew somebody was going to ask me this someday, and I wrote down the difference for like every single meeting for a year, and then nobody asked, so I didn't write it down anymore.
That's why they're coming in February.
Well, is that the reason? I mean, is this a fund that revenue goes into, but, are they pre-funding major capital things in the sewer system or something? I mean, I never pay much attention, quite frankly, because they have their own people that manage all this.
So they do, and essentially we could just combine the sewer assessment and the sewer use fund. They don't really need to be separated. There is a distinction between the two, so I will get that narrative that I wrote down for a year and send it along to you. But I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head. The sewer assessment fund is very rarely used.
So I did, Andy, I
only-
did look back at the annual
Revenue from
financial
interest
report, and it
investment.
did have a balance of 1.6 million, which makes sense. So then they took the 1.2, but it's, I guess, part of this document here doesn't tell that story.
Right.
So how can we get a document that would sort of tell that story? I feel like I'm missing information. Like I wouldn't have known that unless I went back and looked at the annual financial report, just sort of understand what was happening there.
And where did all the money go?
Probably capital,
Capital.
right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, you don't have to answer that tonight,
I
but
don't
can
know
you
if I
give
have a
some
good
thought?
answer for that. I mean, other than producing a multi-year annual financial statement.
I mean, maybe they're like the fire department. The fire department does a great job of saving up money before it does a capital thing rather than bonding for it.
Right.
And so maybe they're doing the same thing in the sewer.
I think
building up funds.
it's a version of it, but I don't want to misspeak, so.
Yeah.
Well,
You can come
I
back
mean,
to us.
new projects would come in as an assessment, wouldn't they? As opposed to use, right? So whether it's connectivity or
So,
how many
right,
things
but
are
there's
there?
also assessments that they take in as part of their operating.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not clear on the distinction between the two, but yes, you're
Gotcha.
absolutely right.
I didn't see the non-lapsing fund. Is that included in this report?
No, I have that note for next year, for next time to add it to the Board of Ed report.
And that's still about 600?
151,000.
We go into special revenue funds. Other questions on that?
Just on several of these, Amy, I just had concerns that there's a pretty healthy fund balance and not much of a track record of spending. So I start to wonder, well, why are these funds building up money if there's no spending?
So it depends on the uses. So we can dig deeper into these. There's so many of these funds.
I know.
So
I'm
social services
sorry.
programs, it's just, Kristen has a hard time spending some of this money and associated with the restrictions that are on the donation money.
Which one are you on now?
I'm just talking in general.
Oh.
So the social services programs, the preservation of historic documents.
Yeah, that one I know.
That one, the town clerk's office, with the turnover in the town clerks, Erica had a set use for it. Trish has kind of came in and reevaluating those funds and what she can use them for. Let me think of the other one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the library, for example. Spent $2,900 last year, and they have 46,000. So
Yeah.
when they come to us asking for money for books again, I'm gonna like take it out of here.
I mean, so a lot of their donations are for their programs. So I don't know I feel like if there was money available for books, Lisa would have used it by now. But I can get a little bit more detail on some of those things for the budget season, and if they can take a look at these funds and just do an assessment of if they can pull from any of them.
Police Community Services Fund, same thing, they spent $500. last year, 129 last year, 567 the year before, and there's $50,000 in the, like, you spend it, like,
Yeah.
I
what,
think,
sitting there doesn't get you anything.
would it be fair to say it's the consensus of this board is we should spend those down? And we'd like to get rid of special revenue funds unless they serve an ongoing purpose.
Right. Yeah. I know the narcotics task force, you can't because it's a state grant and there's
Right.
a whole bunch of,
Well, some of the
We're
our
waiting-
recurring
we're waiting for them to
revenue comes in
audit.
and revenue go out, but we just would like to understand what we're doing,
Right.
especially during the budget, what those purposes are for.
Yeah, if there's no special purpose for any of these funds, then we should just get rid of them.
Yeah.
And at first dollars out would be these, and then we can at least analyze each line item if we have to.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can have the department heads add that to their budget items of stuff to include.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these, like
Right.
Tar on 19, County Road, it shows a balance of 519. I think last night, Roy, watching your thing, said there was about 400. So I was just wondering, does this, when you give this number, does this include what has been budgeted for 2023 that will come out of that?
So
Are there encumbrances included here?
So there's no encumbrances. We don't track the expenditures out of this fund. We track them as transfers. So this money will be transferred out of this fund and into the capital project fund. So it looks like these transfers haven't been done yet, but it looks like 600.
Which one is that?
617,000 came out last year. So we just have to do the transfers appropriated for this year. So those will be updated for the next quarterly, and then you'll have your revised fund balance.
And we don't have to do this now because I know these are smaller funds, so in terms of the value of your time, I'm not sure you should devote that much time to this, but it would be helpful to sort of know the budgets for this. Like, we look at this and think it's a very healthy 519 balance, but in fact, we used about 250 of Town Aid Road in the fiscal year 2023 budget, so that balance is not reflective of something we could evaluate during fiscal year 2024 because it doesn't include the encumbrances.
So that's true, but during the budget process, we give a breakdown of this fund and the overall year over year of anticipated spend compared to what we think that we're going to get in for grants.
Right. We do get that during the budget.
Yeah.
One of the things I happen to be on the Simsbury Celebrates thing, and I don't remember what page that was on, but it's showing a healthy balance of
26, page 26.
26, but it is in fact not that because the lighting has not been paid, and when we talked to Tom Taberski, he's anticipating the fund balance will be closer to 3 to 5, which is what you need to have in the bank before you can even start next year's planning.
Mhm.
So some of these special revenues look like they're more healthier than they are because they don't have the full, and there's no narrative there to explain that what's coming. So how do we convey that true picture, I guess, is what I'm like you to think about. Again, $20,000.
Yeah.
Is that worth how much of your time? I don't know, but
I mean, I can reinforce the department has to get purchase orders in as soon as they can, but I'm at their mercy, right? That's not in-house. So I would have to chase them for the same thing.
and I'm not sure that's worth your time. But just so the public knows, if they see a healthy balance, it may not necessarily be reflective of where it's going to
But I
end
can
up.
put that reminder out there.
But I mean, there's a fiscal notes section here. You could just make a note that's like, for example, dial-a-ride. Are
Yes,
they
I was,
expecting to buy? Maybe they're buying a vehicle, right? So it would just be expected to spend $45,000 on it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I could do that on the stuff that I know about. I was just
Oh, I
speaking
see.
to the stuff that Lisa was talking about, like they didn't put in encumbrance. I have no idea that they're waiting for a light bill.
Gotcha.
do you-
And then for anything, I would say that doesn't have any activity at all, those funds, those special revenue funds should just be closed down unless, again, there's a fiscal note that says that, this is an anomaly. Usually every year, there's activity.
Yeah, and then we have a couple of two. Remember, we went through these. Was it about a year or two ago now when we went through these? And some of them are actually just state funding that we can't close until they ask for their money back.
yeah, but that was one of the narcotics task force is one of those.
It was one of those, yeah.
But
So we couldn't use that to offset the cost of the dog? Well, actually, it's not a narcotics dog, sorry. Never mind.
Do you want another dog?
Our
No, but we
favorite
should,
dog.
but I mean, I think I mean, I can't imagine the state arguing with us about proactively sending the money back.
I don't know.
Well, you want to know if you're sending
Get
the
it
right
off our
amount back.
books. It's just
Right.
messy.
I think we're waiting for an audit from the state on that, right? That's my recollection.
Probably. I mean, the state is 7 years behind in our capital audit, so
Oh, well.
we're just
That's
waiting.
fine.
Yeah.
Then the
Better
perennial.
in our pocket making interest in
Right.
theirs.
Yeah.
The perennial question on the 350th committee, which doesn't exist anymore. The committee's been disbanded and there's like $35,000. What is the plan for that? Can we close that out and put that back in capital reserve?
You have to send it back to all the
Christmas.
donors.
I don't know. That's a fair question.
Or donate it to
It's
something else.
taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Well, it could be.
Okay, I'll follow up on that one.
And Amy, I just want to follow up on Derek's question about the dial-a-ride. This is expanded dial-a-ride. Is that different than regular dial-a-ride? And it's
Yes.
page 23 is $67,000 in there, and they haven't spent a dime in 2 years.
23. So, we had changed this, I believe, maybe when Maria first came, where we were tracking all of the dial-a-ride program in here. Part of it was in the operating budget, part of it was in the special revenue fund. We transferred it over so that the dial-a-ride program is recorded as part of the operating budget where the grant is. This fund is our past collections, and so what we're doing actually is building up this fund balance so that when there's maintenance on the buses, we have the money out of
Okay,
this
so
fund
this
to
is a
fund it
capital.
instead of taking it from operating.
So this is now a capital reserve for maintenance.
For the dial-a-ride program specifically, yes.
So again, maybe we add this to our policy and let fund balance be in this. So for Culture Parks and Rec, Sue and this. What, I think Government Financial Officers Association pretty much says don't compartmentalize money unless you really need to. And so I'd want to understand why we're doing that as opposed to doing it in capital reserve separately.
That's my mantra always. Like, we have too many little pockets. Everybody's saving money, and none of that counts towards our, rating.
Right, so the pass fees though, so for this one in particular, tracking this separately makes sense to me because you want to make sure that the pass fees are used for the actual program and it doesn't get commingled with the operating. I mean, we could do that in a different way. We could put it into the capital reserve and just earmark it for expanded dial-a-ride, but the fund already existed, so we've just been utilizing it.
And so the idea is because it's fee-based, you keep it as a separate fund.
And maintenance is not an expenditure?
What do you mean?
Yeah, well, it's vehicle repair, right? That's what it says here. And I'm just saying these buses must have gotten at least one oil change this year. This is
Right.
One would hope.
this is minutia, right? I apologize, but like I guess where I'm going with this is that whoever is sending you these numbers or whoever's heading up these individual groups needs to, without sounding, it just needs to be accountable for the numbers, right? So there needs to be a conversation about what they plan on doing with the money or when, and if these are real numbers or not. Again, if general maintenance is not considered an expenditure, okay, well then where's the money to do that? Because what I don't want are these buses breaking down after not being taken care of, and all of a sudden they're asking us for $60,000 for a bus.
Right. So the buses are from Martel. So that program is separate. That's different. They're maintaining their own buses. These are for the two small vans that we have.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't even know if we have one or two of those vans right now because we got them under a grant and they've been stuck in the black hole of the supply issue. And I don't even think we've paid for them yet.
But is it possible that the upkeep of those vehicles is in someone else's budget?
No, we made sure it's coming out of this money.
Well,
But
then,
there's been no
But
expense.
there's been no expenses
So
for
the
2
concern
years.
is, are you saying we don't have the,
We don't have the buses.
okay, because of the supply side?
Mhm.
Okay. But once we do have the
Vans, I should
buses,
say.
No, we don't have them yet. Okay.
Right.
okay.
ah,
There's an explanation.
There's,
we go.
yeah, we haven't spent any money because we don't have them.
We're generating
Okay.
revenue. We're giving somebody a ride in something.
Yeah, I mean, this is money
Is that
that's
the
been there
buses?
for a few years.
So we still have the passes, but so like I have to get the specifics, but I know that there's two. So there's the regular dial-a-ride program, which is run, operating, functional. Martel handles that, and then we have two of the smaller buses that I'm not entirely sure of what their function is, but those are the ones that are waiting for us to get them.
So could an explanation of this be that we're paying someone else to do the transportation? Therefore, we have no maintenance? Is that?
So for the regular program, yes, but for our vans, no, we would have maintenance on our vans.
Once we get them. I don't quite get where all the revenue came from, but why it doesn't go to the regular big buses.
So I think
Cover
that's,
Martel.
I can confirm, but I think this is when, before I came here, when it was running both the regular dial-a-ride program and the expanded, and we stopped, and it had the fund balance in there. I don't think it was ever moved.
Well, how are the fees paid to the dial-a-ride program? How are the fees paid? Is it an annual fee? Does someone buy a pass for the year or something like that?
Per ride.
It's not per ride. I don't know if it's an annual fee.
Because that might explain how we got the revenues without delivering
Oh, no.
rides.
So the expanded program is definitely a lot less lucrative. So, I don't have the year as last year, but the 60,000 is definitely from the.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the $845
Oh,
that have been collected.
Dial-a-ride passes are available for an annual donation of $25 for an individual or $35 for a couple if you
There
are
you go.
Mike.
senior over 60.
It's amazing what our website. Yeah, that's great, Mike. Well done.
We are so happy you're here tonight.
Yeah.
So maybe we could just get a little clarity of that for the budget, because if there's money there that's available for use, I mean, I don't know what other people's maintenance are, but 60,000 of maintenance, that's probably 10 years of maintenance.
Yeah.
Do we need that for
Well,
reserve?
I just go back to whoever's providing you these numbers
Yeah.
needs to provide some commentary and not just numbers, and have an explanation of what's going on with the money that's allocated towards them.
We can include that.
That makes sense. Maybe, so the big scary thing, which is not so scary, it turns out, is the ARPA is looking like it does not have a lot of money, but there is a reason for that.
Right. So we had transferred out the first tranche as part of the fiscal year 23 budget process. And then the money that's come in to date for the second tranche is only the town allocation. We have not received the county allocation yet, which should be coming to us within the second quarter, I believe. So either now or January, February timeframe. So that will be coming.
And how much will that be?
It's just a difference between the 3.7 and the 1.2. So about
2.5.
Yeah.
240.
Yeah, about 2.4.
So again, sort of going back to the narrative, if you look at that, you might not realize how much money is actually in there because we don't have a.
Up to date.
So
An explanation, yeah.
So to Derek's point, I guess there's limited value in what we have in this book because it doesn't show the picture. And I don't know how we get that better. Again, lower priority than some of the other stuff you do because they're special revenue funds, but something to think about long term.
I would just sort of make the same comment about the senior center programs, that we seem to have a fair amount of money in there relative to what the annual expenditures look like. And are, should they be spending more for seniors? I don't know what these programs are, but
Yeah.
just
I'd
having
have
it
to
just
ask
sit there. I mean, I know I've seen this year after year, like, why aren't they spending? There's got to be seniors that need services.
Well, if we had, as Eric suggested, I think Linda just made the point, if we had those explanations, then we wouldn't have to be beating up the finance, pressing you to explain things that aren't in the
I get that.
numbers.
I mean, so I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting the additional information. It's just nothing that we've done before. So
I see.
it's just a matter of changing practice and going back out to the department heads and getting, their thoughts on their usage. And
Sure.
perhaps just starting with the budget process would just be the
I think starting with
easiest.
the budget would be good, because we can look at that point, we'll probably ask what are the fund balances, what tools do we have, because this is gonna be a tight budget year, so we're gonna need all the tools.
Right. So just a reset.
That makes sense to do it during the budget, and then next year, as we clear that up, we can
Yeah.
get an idea of how to do that. Should we keep going?
Yeah.
Do you wanna go, are people ready to move into the capital funds?
The trust funds
Do you
usually?
wanna, we can do trust funds if you
I don't
want.
have it.
Trust
The trust funds are
the
kind
next
of like
thing in the
locked in.
packet.
We can do trust funds. Trust funds, interestingly, they actually have trustees and they're monitored by the probate court, so we actually have very little, I don't think we even control them or approve them.
The trustees via the Bank of America, and then we have two town residents that are attorneys that are the trustees.
Those are done, there's usually a purpose for these trusts, and so they work with the town manager on how to use the trusts. But it's good for us to monitor because the use of this trust might offset another expense in the budget. But I don't believe that is something we approve or review. Oh, forgot about pensions, what was I thinking?
That's next.
Amy, you wanna give a narrative there?
So actually, Chris Cashmore gave you your two-pager at the back of the performance summary. I believe it's similar to what he's already gone over. Just starting to see the change in the market value come back. Not any significant changes through September, but after September, we're definitely seeing the numbers come back up. So some good news there as we start to move through the year. As far as any real changes from year to year, it looks like it's pretty status quo. I'm not seeing anything sticking out at me. That's a major
Maybe we
variance.
have the final numbers from our actuaries to what the annual determined contribution is.
I'm sorry?
We have the number of what the ARC, I think they changed, they don't call it an ARC anymore, right, annual required contribution. We have those final numbers, those were given us during the experience
I
study.
I think they're actually in this packet too, as part of your agenda items.
Yeah.
Yep. Page 79.
Does anyone have any questions on that? We had a pretty, for folks who are interested, the last week, November meeting, we had a great presentation by our pension actuary. It's riveting. Okay, we ready to move on to capital? We've got the capital project fund starting on page 44.
The magnifying glass.
But there are grid lines, which we are so excited about.
Yes.
Amy, do you want to start with just a narrative?
I don't really have anything prepared. There's nothing other than the couple of notes. So the completed projects are typically pending retainage. There was one for the berm improvements on the sewer projects fund that has a TBD date as expected completion date. They had applied for a grant through the state. Unfortunately, they were not approved for that grant. So that project is currently on hold. And then moving down to the town projects, the radio system upgrade, this is something that we talked about at year end. It's showing a negative balance. However, that's really just a receivable that's due from the ambulance association. And then under the education projects, you'll see that there's various ones that say need audit. And those are the ones that we're talking about where the state is significantly behind on auditing the capital projects. And once the state comes in, we can finally close those out.
Amy, the Henry James Phase 3 is showing almost 4 million under budget.
So I can check on the final payments for that. Perhaps it could be. I know there was significant savings in that project. I don't know if it was to the tune of 4 million, and I don't think that we bonded for the whole thing. But I can see if he's anticipating any other payouts associated with that.
Because if you add up just the Board of Ed needs audit, that's almost 5.4 million. That would take care of most of their capital needs for a few years. Lots of roofs, that's 5 roofs. So I talked with the first selectman, and the Max students here, about perhaps reaching out with our newly elected representatives to see if we could encourage the state to do those state audits, because that could free up quite a bit of capital dollars that the Board of Ed is in desperate need of. So I think that, if we can make that a priority, that's a tremendous amount of savings to the taxpayers and would benefit the community. So that will be a savings initiative that perhaps with no cost, but with several meetings, we might be able to move that a little bit. A couple of things. Could you walk us through the multi-use trails? There's so many multi-use trails. We have one project from fiscal year 17, which means it was approved in fiscal year 16, July 1, fiscal 2016, to be completed in December 2023. So that's a 6-year project. Wanted to get sort of an idea about that one. And then the fiscal year 19 multi-use trail, looks like there was 0 expenditure for 3 years, more than 3 years on that project. So that would have technically lapsed, but I think Amy had an explanation for that. So can you talk about those 2 projects?
So I can try. The multi-use connection master plan updates, that was the one from fiscal year 17, and the connection through Terrafil. Jeff was really good about updates to these. I haven't just touched base with Adam or Tom Roy on these projects, so I can see what the status is as he's starting to get up to speed on these and do a follow-up for you. On the fiscal year 19 one, that 1 million, I just lost it. 1,020,000. That is one that you all just reappropriated. It's part of those grants that's going back to referendum as part of the 3%. So this money was originally approved. They went back and forth with the state on the project. By the time the bids came in, they worked with the state. The state had changes to the projects, recommended increases, and they're funding the increases. So that was one of the ones that we saw a large increase in revenue coming from the state for the project. So that has been put into those referendum questions, so they were reappropriated by both boards as part of that process.
Perfect. Does that make sense? Okay. Then going on to capital reserve fund. I just had a question on the, 2 questions on bond premium. We had talked about at one point, and you had said bond premium doesn't really come back to us. It just reduces the amount we borrow, because we use bond premium to pay down the amount of what we borrow. And can you talk a little bit about that and why there is bond premium in here if it's, as opposed to being used to just reduce what we owe?
Right, so it's just a difference in practice. So when I had first started here and we did our first issuance for fiscal year 19, and then we did another issuance for fiscal year 20, we had worked with our bond advisors at the time, and there really wasn't a discussion of options as to what our options were with the bond premium. It was just, you get a bond premium. So we got a bond premium. We put it in our capital reserve, we allocated it in accordance with the bonding schedule and our debt schedule, and we used it to pay off accordingly. The next time that we went out to do it, when we were talking to our bond counsel, they let us know that we do not have to take the premium. We can reduce our borrowing, and that's actually the preferred method for a AAA rated community. So knowing that that was an option, that's what we decided to move forward with in all of our future issuances. So we do not have money sitting in the capital reserve waiting to pay off our debt year over year. We just reduce our amount of borrowing.
So this is just a legacy of a prior practice. So in the past, it has always been the policy of the Board of Finance in the town that you use bond premium to reduce the debt service payment for whatever you borrowed for. I guess we had taken it in the past and it sat there, and then you would just pay it out to reduce. But this way it makes more sense to just do it straight off the top. So that's sort of the theory behind that. And then the private duty fund, you had mentioned at our November meeting that was more like 600.
So you all had approved your year-end transfers in October. So this is reflective as of, I did an estimate as of June 30th. That just needs to be updated as part of your year-end transfers.
Okay.
It is more like 6.
Okay.
What's the 150 in the assessor's office study?
That's what we approved.
Okay, I'm just checking.
That's us.
That's my favorite topic, so.
I know, it's right there. Can't
It's
miss
in
it.
there for the budget, yes.
I'm sorry, what is the private duty fund? Let me ask an ignorant question.
That was the police, when they do, like at a construction project, they
Oh,
get paid,
well,
and it used to go into their slush fund, and we said, no, let's put it in the capital fund.
You don't mean to say
And they-
slush fund.
They use it to buy cars.
Well, the way it works, the way that special revenue was approved is we set it up, but at the end of the year, if there's any left over, we transfer it to the capital reserve fund and we earmark it there because the Board of Selectmen wanted to track it, but it can be used for any purpose.
It can be.
Yeah.
We wanted to give the Board of Selectmen control over how it was used.
Thank you.
Are we ready to move on to CNR? Page 47. I had asked Amy in advance to sort of go through a few of them. Look like they may have lapsed, given on what year they were approved. Our policy is that if there's no spending within 3 years after a project's been approved, it reverts back to the capital reserve fund, and that's the sanitary sewer lining, the asphalt trailer, the radio feasibility study, and I don't know about the automated book handler, but I'd asked Amy to sort of walk us through those.
You'll
So,
notice $127,000 for a dial-ride van.
You're right, I didn't see that one. That was 2021, so that wouldn't have been spent yet.
We
so
just
those
haven't
are 2
received
vans,
it.
and those are both of the vans that we haven't received yet.
The asphalt
That's
trailer and
really
the sanitary
long.
sewer lining.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Tom Murray on those.
And then I asked about the mobile data terminals, because it looks like that exceeded the budget.
Right,
Page
so,
48.
yep, that's an accounting error. There was a purchase order posted to that line item that shouldn't have been, so that is not overspent. That will be cleared up for your next report.
Perfect. Any other questions on that? So first of all, Amy, thank you. That quarterly reports take a ton of work, and we're very appreciative. And I think the more information you get, it helps us understand it, and it's really helpful to, I think, the public to understand. I was actually Googling around, and there's something called the Global Initiative on Financial Transparency. That is
You do lead a boring
I
life, my
know.
dear.
But this is entirely consistent with that. How do you take difficult financial situation and information and translate it in a way that the public and the policy boards can understand it, digest it, and communicate it? And so I think we're making great progress there, and I do want to commend you for that, because it is not an easy thing to do, and it does take time, and I do want to recognize the effort you put into it, because it's so much better, and each time it gets better and better. So congratulations on that. Okay, Board of Ed.
So on the Board of Ed side, we've had a few awards to date. So the top 2 open choice awards, we have been awarded those for the current fiscal year. Pretty consistent with the prior year. On the first award, we had a slight increase of about $675,000. And then on the open choice attendance, which is a direct correlation to our October 1st enrollment, a slight decrease of about $11,000. Moving down to the federal grant awards, we had some preliminary awards on our title money. So the first one, our Title I, is about $121,000, slight increase of about $2,700. Our Title II money used for our professional development, a slight increase of about $3,300 compared to the prior year. Title II, again, a minor increase of about $600. Title IV remained consistent. And then our IDEA, which is our special education, we had received a final award that was about $41,000 increase compared to the prior year. And then the last one where we've actually received an award is our Carl Perkins, which is on the next page. And we had received an overall increase of about $10,000 compared to the prior year.
Amy, one of the things I struggle with sometimes on the Board of Ed is there are expenditures and there's gross expenditures. And if you look at the annual financial report, it's quite a bit of gross expenditure. Can we get a year-to-year gross expenditure comparison?
So yes, our accountant is working on that, and I can touch base with you on that offline.
Thank you. And then one of the questions we had, the pending certified staff, when do we anticipate getting that?
We'll have that for Tri-Board
For when?
Tri-board.
next month.
And have we confirmed we're going to do the tri-board at our regular meeting on the Board of Finance, and Maria and Matt for the Okay. Any other questions on the Board of Ed? Okay. The next item before us is, as members of the public may not be aware, again, a very exciting presentation in our November meeting on our pension experience study. And we were given some recommended assumptions to adopt. It is best practice to listen to your pension actuary, so long as there's a rational basis, which she gave a tremendous background for it, to adopt the assumptions that they recommend. So we had those with our last meeting. They were within our packet, so the public had a month to review them if they're interested in them. And before us is a motion to move effective December 13th to approve the utilization of the updated pension assumptions as outlined in the attached presentation. So it is. Would someone like to make that motion?
I would.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Amy, did you have any input you wanted to give before we go ahead and vote? No. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Oh, any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. I'll now go into tri-board budget modeling, the really exciting part. One of the things I do want to commend both Amy and Francine, because this is a reval year, it's very hard to capture what the true impact of the grand list is and what that will mean to our taxpayers. So Amy and I have been working on conceptualization. Other people have given input. But Amy, why don't you walk us through sort of where we are, what you see,
Sure.
and then we'll go into some impacts to the taxpayer.
So just conceptually, we had put together some scenarios, and I can take you through the individual scenarios, but just to draw your attention to the bottom for a second under the tax impact and what we're seeing for this year compared to prior year revals. So down at the bottom, you have your tax impact, and this is for the prior fiscal year 23. Actually, this is still really small.
Oh, thank you.
And then we have our fiscal year 24. So a $200,000 home is seeing much less of an impact during this reval compared to a prior year. So I wasn't here for the prior reval, but from what I understand, the higher end homes saw a significant decrease and the lower end homes saw a significant increase. And now
You're saying in taxes on the
Yes.
last reval.
Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
so now that's kind of shifting back the other way. So a $200,000 home, for example, is seeing about a 20% increase. And these are not final. I just want to say that this is a draft. This is high level from Francine. We do not have these final results back from the reval company, but as she's going through the reval, this is what she is seeing. So seeing that these, say $200,000 value homes are having about a 20% increase. So a 20%
20%
Where's the
increase.
20%?
It looks like a decrease.
Right. The home value is 20% increase. This is the taxed impact.
Oh,
So the home value with a 20% increase, the tax impact on that in this particular scenario, they actually are seeing a decrease in their taxes. The same goes for this $350,000 home, they're seeing about a 30% impact. And at the 30% impact, they're seeing about a $622 increase in their taxes.
So you're saying before we add any budget changes, like if you're just assuming we haven't changed the mill rate.
So yes, so not changing the mill rate, the impact, what they're seeing overall on, say, a lower end valued home is about 20%. The median impact for the homes is about 30%, and then the higher end is seeing a higher percentage impact.
So those numbers up above on the mill rate, that's assuming.
That's assuming a scenario. I'm just showing you down here that the impact of the homes,
I see. Because it's
the same impact for one house. Typically, you would see on a non-reval year, all these percentages are going to be the same. Everybody increases the same.
Sure.
And on the reval year, you'll see that the lower end houses are having much of a less financial hit than the higher end houses.
What's the median home price in Simsbury, Connecticut? I'm
and
sure it's more than 200,000.
No, it's about
It
between
is.
340 and 350.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
Now
that
the
that
median is about
$200,000
Is it
home
now
value
400?
analysis is
400.
meaningless.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm going with that. Is it sends a message. It's like a feel good message, but it doesn't apply to anybody or most people in town.
Oh, I disagree with that. There's a lot of condos in town that are less than 200 or less.
We actually have those numbers. Amy, can we get from Francine how many are in which tranches? Because I think
If the
Derek's
median-
point is
I
right.
think that's a good idea.
If the median is 400, there's obviously an equal number below it.
Yeah,
Because
so
I
the
think
median's
Derek's
about
point is
400.
how many people are going to be impacted, how many are going to get tax savings, how many are going to see a big hit,
Yeah.
how many are going to see a medium hit. So
Right.
we should understand the. I
so
think-
this scenario anticipates a reduction of the mill rate. Is that right?
Right.
And what's that based on? I mean, how did you pick the mill rate you used for this scenario?
So the mill rate is calculated based on the grand list information that we have. So
Okay.
all of those 20%, 30%, growth capture, like development captures. So whatever the numbers that Francine had given me for the last presentation for our grand list growth, we have so much increase in value that the mill rate just naturally goes down.
So
Based
you
on
took the
our
same
budget assumptions? Would it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
She incorporated the budget assumption is what you were asking.
Yes, that's what I
So this
understand. Now it's
assumes
clear.
budget increases.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like the,
It's like trying to figure out what we would, if it weren't a reval year, what the mill rate would have done. Is that what you're saying?
yes, that's what we're trying to look for.
No.
Say that again.
But then spreading it over a larger grand list, right?
Right. So if we had no change to the budget, I mean,
Right.
that would be ideal, but highly unlikely.
But you assumed a change in the budget
Right.
as
Exactly.
predicted, but spread over a larger number of.
Increased value. Right.
Yeah.
It's like
Grand
Christmas,
list.
it's like a Christmas tale. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
The budget doesn't, some of the budget we're obligated to increase because we.
It's hard to do. I know what it is, but I can't articulate it.
Well, So budget increases where we make a lot of assumptions. We have to pay the union negotiated salaries. We have to pay debt service. We're legally obligated to pay that. We don't have to have the same number of employees. You don't have to fill vacant positions. And there is about 15% in each of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Ed budgets that are non-salaried that can be perhaps lessened by using some of our special revenue funds that we have excess things there. Or we can use capital reserve. But using the assumptions that we've approved over the years and that Amy views as rational and reasonable, and have you found them to be fairly accurate, would you say? Yeah. And they're unfortunately a little bit realistic.
So, Amy, you're saying in a non-reval year, all of those 200, 350, and 750 would go up the same percentage.
Exactly.
So I'm having a hard time with just putting the words together on all of this, but it seems like it's heavily weighted towards the going up side. And I was expecting that we were going to see a significant increase in the grand list.
Mhm.
She had talked about like an additional $3 million in revenue on, I forget what the base was. So I'm just sort of surprised that it would go up that much
So
on the higher end homes, because while there are homes of 200,000,
right, but
They're
that's
not-
because we're looking at, like, I was just showing you the overall impact of the, the percentages and how typically we're used to seeing that they're the same. And the trends that we're
But
seeing, this is why they're not the same.
This is where the
But up
revenue
here is
is
the
coming
actual
from.
scenarios of the dollar value. So this is not a zero-based budget. So this is anticipating an increase of the Board of Ed about 3.5% and Board of Selectmen 2.5%, which gets us to our tax impact down here.
but the average of the negative 1.4 and the 6 and the 10, if it weren't a reval year, what would that average out to? Presumably somewhere around,
Not the same number
5
of
or 6.
homes in each category.
right. Well, but, I'm looking at median home value. You're right, there's different numbers of homes.
Right. I mean, I could probably do. Why isn't that?
Lisa, you're saying if we learn the true spirit of Christmas, the taxes will go down.
Precisely.
So if there wasn't a 20% increase on the value of that home, the taxes would go down quite significantly.
Say that again?
If the value of the home did not increase the 20%, the taxes would have gone down quite significantly.
So Amy, part of this is being driven by the union settlement with the Board of Ed. So what is the dollar number of the Board of Ed increase that you're anticipating?
The dollar value of just the
3.5%.
SEA contract,
Yeah.
that's about $2.5 million.
So just there, and what was their increase last year?
I don't remember offhand. Let's see.
At some point, I would like you to go back and figure out what's the average tax increase that you built in here, because it's looking like it's somewhere around 5 or 6%, but I'm guessing.
Right, so it would be this 3.66
Where is that number?
right up
Oh,
here.
up there, okay.
So the dollar value increase is about $4 million, which leads to 3.66%, which
That's a pretty
is
healthy tax increase.
right, which is what is translating down here.
Maybe a little higher than what you were hoping for.
Well, it's debt service is killing us. That's the $2 million in debt service. We
Yeah,
knew
so
that was
that's
coming.
definitely part of it.
No, but part of that we planned for because we reduced cash for capital, so it makes the hit not as bad. But debt service and the union settlement is dramatic. Can you change the numbers just in real time if we go to Board of Selectmen and get that down to 400 and Board of Ed to 2.5? You said it's 2.4, is that just the SEA?
Right, so you want me to change the increase to 2.5?
Yeah.
So just reduce it by about 200,000?
That one, and the other one reduced by 200. Does that move that at all?
So I'd have to go back to my other worksheet to plug it in. So if that's that, and then we do, you want this one at 4, you said?
Yeah, do a 400,000 increase.
Oops. Oops.
So if total expenses went up 3.2, if the total revenue was up 3.6, that shouldn't be a huge tax increase.
Yeah, that's the thing I think we're having a hard time grappling with, Amy. If expenses are going up 3.2 and revenue is going up 3.6, why is there any tax increase?
Because their home values are going up.
Say again?
The home values are going up.
But
The
you-
revenues have to come from somewhere.
The revenues are coming from the increased home value. I guess what we're asking, but there is some economic development revenue, right? That's not increasing home value. What is that
Right.
number?
That was in the packet from last week, I think. I don't have that number offhand.
So the net effect, Linda, is because our economic development increase only went up a little bit. It's actually, our expenses went up more than the new grand list.
The one, 834. So no, it's not a huge difference. Just by decreasing those two.
It just gets us a little. So this is a tough year. Let's hope the grand list comes in better than Francine is projecting, or else it's going to be
You can count on
a little
that.
bit tough. I mean, one of the things we do have going for us, and Wendy, your budget, the Board of Selectmen has come in $1 million under budget for 3 years in a row. So we may have an opportunity to budget the vacancy rate a little less conservatively there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing with Tom Wright asked Amy and Maria and Wendy to look into, they get the Aquarian dollars now, so we may be able to budget some of those if that's becoming a regular contribution. Remember, that was about $600,000. That's half their public works paving budget. So if we can budget, it doesn't all correlate between what needs to be done with what Aquarian is doing, but there may be some correlation, so I may be able to reduce that.
What's aquariums?
The
Why
water,
are they?
because they dig up stuff to fix things, like my house had a huge water main break, it had to be fixed, and they pay sometimes the town to fix
Okay.
those, or to put in new pipes. So this is the year to sort of harness all available revenues, special revenue funds. One of the things we're gonna try and work on, and if the medium home value is now 400,000, we think, based on what Francine, so we should start with that as our base, change our assumptions from 400, maybe get that to 400, 300, and I think 600 maybe. I don't know what numbers people wanna look at for comparisons. Does anyone have any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
So right now we have 200, 350, and 750, and the 200 and 350 are probably not realistic representative of how many people have that. We're now at 400 is the median. So we should base off that, how much higher. The higher your home costs, the higher your taxes are gonna be.
Yeah. Again, I don't see any real value to that analysis on the bottom. It's feel good for raising taxes if you say that it's only a cup of coffee a month, an increase in taxes. I don't really think maybe it's helpful for the broader public. I don't know. I generally don't put any value in that tax impact analysis based on your home value.
The 200,000, 350, those represent the values from the last reval, or
No, the new.
are the new values?
So the 200, the 350, and the 750 are the old values.
Right.
Oh,
Well, that makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. So for the values for the fiscal year 23, and then in here, I manually updated them to be
Right.
increased to the new values. So it's 200,000, and then I put in this little 20% to increase the value to calculate it appropriately.
So Amy, when we get to the tri-board, I think because we all sort of missed that, it would be helpful to add a column, say 200 value home fiscal year 23, same home 240, so that we capture what the new value is, so
For-
they can see.
For our categories, I would think the middle one ought to be the median.
Right.
We need some jumbo, some large. And could we figure out what a condo, is there a median condo cost? That would be in other words, 200,000, I think, as Derek points out, that's really not usually a house. That is more
a
likely.
condo still counts as a
House doesn't make a home.
No, but I mean, it's not,
Sorry, I had to.
I can't get out of that one. But I mean, it's probably not a freestanding house, but the lower one might be the median condo price would be a good starting one.
And it could particularly impact seniors and,
No,
families
it's
starting
relevant.
out,
No,
right.
it's directly relevant. But
right,
I mean, I know the median reflects something real.
right.
If we can have a one that reflects the cost of a condo, and then something jumbo that people can figure for the upper bracket.
Right. Okay, so, and then can you show us the scenarios the alternate scenarios you had there, just to give an idea? One of the things, Matt Curtis always asks us, he goes, well, what's my number? What can I spend? And so we asked Amy to do some scenarios, and you can see as the scenarios,
Those get worse and worse.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not gonna be a lot of flexibility this year.
We want scenarios going in the other direction.
Yeah, I think so. It's not a year to do new programming unless it's offset by reductions.
Yeah, I'm just still a little disappointed, I guess, because I thought with the additional 3 million in tax revenue that it would be an easier year.
I mean, it depends on how much the home value is going up. So, I mean, I can, hold on, maybe this
Well,
will.
So the
This is
3 million we're
additional 3 million is because-
anticipating is based on
On home values
improvements
going
on home
up.
values, but that's baked into these numbers,
Yes,
right? But if
So
we're
in
going
other
to
words-
spend
more than
that's-
that.
$3 or $4 or $5 million more than we spent last year, it's going to come out of our taxes.
That's right.
Well, but if it was 3 million more than we spent last year, then it should have been no increase in tax in mill rate.
In mill rate,
because-
this is a reduction in the mill rate, but it's still coming out of somebody's pocket.
So Amy, we're spending quite a bit more than last year, right?
Mhm.
And most of that is driven, what is the difference between dollar amount between what we spent last year and this year? You said 3.6?
You know, what the additional revenue gets us is a lower mill
Right,
rate,
right.
but not lower taxes.
Mhm.
I don't remember offhand. 3.6. So hold on, I just want to do this quick. So if we had a $350,000 home, and this might confuse you even more, however, it drives home the point of the home values and their impact. So just a budget scenario for fiscal year 24, and we had our mill rate 30.5. We have a $350,000 home. It went up 20%. They're going to have a decrease in their taxes of $175. Now, look what happens when I change this increase to a 30% as opposed to a 20%. They have a $500 increase. So that's $700 change just taking their property value and moving it 10%.
But if they have a 30%, other people are gonna be reduced, right?
Yes.
Question?
Yeah.
Do you recognize me?
Of course.
Who are you again? I don't recognize you.
I'm still confused by the,
Can you please state your name and your
address?
I'm still confused by, so the mill rate this current year was 37.41, right?
Well, it's a little more because we had the
The fire.
fire district.
Thereabouts, yeah.
And now you're showing this 30.58. Is that like kind of all things considered with the reval and everything?
Growth and
kind of
expenses.
adjusted?
Yeah, that's the
So
reset
you
of the
could
reval.
Technically, if you were to say you're gonna keep the mill rate flat, make that 37.58, 41, it's gonna be a big hit to the taxpayers.
Huge, yeah.
Right?
Huge.
No, I know. But there is, I'm just in advance, we're not planning to drop the mill rate to 30.58.
Oh, we are.
No, we are.
It's
Oh,
a,
yeah.
it's a
Yes.
function of the rising home value.
Right.
So you can't, like, if there's a need though, can't that incrementally go up a bit based on need of the town? That's,
Do you,
You
certainly
can, but you
could.
pay for
do
it.
you
Yeah,
like
no,
going
I
to
know.
Starbucks to get a cup of coffee? Or are you going to plan on brewing at home?
I got a free one.
But the point is, you won't be able to show your
I was just
face in
saying
public.
how hard it is. So I've never been here for a reval year. So basically you create that new mill rate as your new norm
Mhm.
and you go with that is really what we're saying, right?
Mhm.
And you just, whatever the mill rate was last year is thrown out.
Right.
because it's
Right,
not-
it's a
Uh-huh,
reset.
Because it's on such a larger.
But it changes
So-
every year.
Yeah.
It doesn't
So-
But
always.
it doesn't always go
Right.
drop that much. So
In a
like-
reval year, it does.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
Well,
it
not
happens-
necessarily.
Sometimes it can go up.
Yeah.
If it goes, yeah.
Okay,
Not
I'm just
always.
saying,
Yeah.
I've never noticed or saw like such a big drop from year to year, but I have not been here for a rebound.
So think of it, and this maybe for the public, and we'll try and visualize
I'm
it,
the
but
public asking the
yeah, but
question.
for a reval, it is a hard concept.
Yeah.
It's what you do is you take the pie. How much do we need to raise in taxes this year as opposed to last year, and then you look at who's going to pay those taxes. And one way you can keep taxes flat if there's an increase is you grow the pie, you get more taxpayers. The other way, if you haven't grown the pie, you say, okay, well, what do I need? And you divide it up and you say, well,
Increase
the
mill
house
rate.
on the hill is very fancy. They should pay more. The house here that's kind of falling apart and is much smaller should pay less. And if everyone's home value goes up the same amount, the taxes are the same, but the mill rate is down.
I somewhat agree with that. I would say that it's all related to comp sales. So if what my market price is, as opposed to whether it's shiny or on the hill, it's really where my house sits among its peers.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So it's just a fluctuation of
What it's worth.
of supply and demand, right?
It's
But I think your point is kind of leading to one of my issues in terms of projecting large increases in our grand list. I don't think it could be a worse time to be in a reval year, because a year ago you could have borrowed and get a mortgage at
Mhm.
sub 3%, and now it's 7%. So I think for anybody who's saying, well, why are my taxes going up on my property when my property isn't as
It's
valuable?
falling.
So that's what I think we need to be talking about, as opposed to if we change this number or that number. It's like it could. And again, I think most people will just get their tax bill and pay it. But there could be, if we're talking about a substantial hit to any one of the categories, I think you could see, potential, alert. I think we might want to have some sort of reserve for, or maybe potentially larger reserve for appeals to property values.
So Francine that is calculated in there. I think she has about 5 million reserved anticipatory. But what is that the right to your? It's a fair question to
I don't
ask.
know.
Is that the right amount?
I don't know what a typical
But
year is.
is it the case that the assessments don't reflect in any way the impact on values of higher interest rates? Because if people are selling houses in this market, that assumes that the current borrowing
I
rates.
would guess that you're looking though at a point in time,
That's right.
and
that
so
point
you'd
in
have
time
to,
is
you'd
now.
have, and no, but that point in time was when they did the reassessment.
Yeah,
Right.
they
Not
evaluated in June and now they.
And now the
But that's
interest
not
rates are
gonna,
so
that's
high.
not going to help the taxpayer gets their bill and at the
Right,
time
but
in
if they come in
February.
and appeal and
say-
say, well, now my house is worth a whole lot less, well, but it wasn't worth a whole lot less back when it was revaluated.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this is painful
It is.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure
Well,
that
it's
the
bucketed.
assessments are actually inaccurate.
The way I look at it, and I understand, point taken on the timing of it, but I look at it just simply as a bucket of money that someone's has available for their housing costs, whether that's home value, including a mortgage at 3% or to 7% or 10%. So I think it's harder to buy a home today.
It is.
So
Yeah, and people are gonna feel that. I mean, some of these are gonna be $60 a month impact.
but as sorry, just didn't mean to interrupt,
Yeah.
but just as it becomes harder to buy a home, it's like to make it easier on that person, prices come down so that if you're a seller of a home or moving out or anyway,
I think
belaboring the point.
the only thing that I would try to tell the public is that the last time we did reval, it was the opposite, that the lower priced homes got whammed and the upper priced homes got windfalls, and now it's a reverse. So it's what goes around comes around, as they say.
But to Derek's point, people are gonna feel it in their
They are,
pocketbooks.
yeah, for sure.
And it's a very tough,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, all these things are coming together. Just think if we hadn't done the 3 million, how high
I
these
know.
taxes would be. So there is some of that. And again, we don't have the final numbers, and Francine is notoriously conservative. So I'm hoping these
This is good.
numbers will get a little better. We'll have a better idea the first week in February, but worst case and realistic planning, this is the planning we need to go into with the tri-board. I think we can say there's a consensus, there's not gonna be a lot of flexibility for scenarios 2 and 3, just because there's not gonna be capacity among our residents to do that. We'll pay what we have to, but this is not a year to do new service enhancements. Non-essential, I should say.
I'm sorry if I should know this, but do we have a breakout of the debt service by Board of Selectmen and Board of Ed?
We don't. That would be a great thing to have.
I agree, as well as cash for capital. That I think we have, right? Because we know what we pay for cash for capital.
Right.
But it'd be nice to see what the allocation of
You
that
have
debt
it?
service is.
Do you have it now?
Well, actually, if you go back to the infamous Barbara Pettigene chart,
Do you have the chart there?
that's color coded, it'll tell you that.
So I do, but that's not broken out by Board of Ed versus.
Oh, that's right. Sometimes you bundle the
Yeah, we don't.
bonding together. But it's a lot of it is sort of, this is the Henry James bond, this is the Latimer bond.
So this is just as of the end of fiscal year 22, because we haven't done any additional borrowing.
See any colors?
But the total town bonded debt is about 13.5, and school is 22.3.
And we haven't yet gone out to bond for Latimer Lane.
Right.
So that's gonna be quite a bit higher. Okay.
And it's all at the same interest rate, right? Doesn't matter, or does it?
No, these are all different interest rates for each issuance.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's an annual debt service associated with each issuance for each year. And so we could find out what the debt service is for broken out by board, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'd love to see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
22 compared to.
As well as
11.
cash for capital, but like I
That's
said,
the
it
bond,
That's the
may or
amount.
may
that's
not
principal
have
and
that.
interest. So that's the bonded amount, right, Amy, not the
Right.
plus interest. So we wanna see bonded amount and interest payments.
So the interest is actually just right next to it. So 22 for the principal,
Gotcha.
4 million for the interest, so 26 total.
And that's for the Board of Ed? What
That's
are
the
we
Board of
paying
Ed.
on?
Right.
So then the town is about 2 million?
Yeah, so the town is about 1.6, so 15 in total.
Amy, can you show us the debt service graph using the other
And
scenarios?
that doesn't include Latimer, right?
Not yet.
Yeah. So that,
It's gonna go through the roof.
and that's why I want to see the allocation.
Yeah. For the tri-board, could you do it by, can you do the Barbara Pettigene chart by Board of Ed? Is there any way you can do that?
I think just the percentage or amount is
Okay,
fine.
that's
For me. Yeah, I can't imagine what goes into the chart, but maybe
Okay.
I'm
So can we see the chart? Because one of the other problems we're gonna have, you think it's bad, our debt service is higher than we had anticipated, which means we're gonna have to relook at the CIP. You still have ARPA funds, yeah. They're gonna need to all go to capital.
Using this year for capital.
Yeah. Thank God.
Magic money.
That's the true slush fund right there.
What is? ARPA? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for taking money out of one pocket and putting it in another.
So Amy, last time we did that, I thought that we had exceeded the 8%. Are we not with the Barry's new borrowing costs?
Oh, you're right. This is the old one from the old budget season. The one from November.
And when is the last we had updated from Barry on that? Because it may be even higher at this point.
I don't think so. We should be good. He did it through multiple years. That's the most recent.
Okay, and what is the value of that blue line above the 8% dollar? Is that a couple million?
Looks like it might be a couple hundred, maybe $500,000. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd
Just
say it's
guessing.
probably around there.
So 2 million will have to be cut out. So, I mean, we have the ARPA, that's the year to use the ARPA for those capital projects, Wendy, so we can get debt service under control.
8 is the one below yellow.
Yes. Right, Amy?
Mm-hmm.
Yellow is the 8%?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And we, you know, our goal is, I mean, we're trying to get it below 8, but our goal has always been 7. So we're very high there. So that is not going to, that's going to make the check, which is why it would be great if we could get those state audits done, because that would free up $5 million and take care of that little problem there.
Is there anything in the state charter that requires the state to audit within a certain time frame? Okay.
No, they
Because
just
we're going to
tried
have trouble in 2027 too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not.
So it'd be nice to
Yeah,
capture
to
as
your
much of
point.
the capital as we can.
Is there any way to free that up without the audit? I mean, the money's just sitting there.
So, I mean, the project is done, so we know what we have for savings.
Yeah.
And if that 4 million for, say, Henry James doesn't come to fruition, we're not gonna bond for it. So that's already included in there.
So, I mean, if the state doesn't audit for a few years, can't we just use it anyway?
like you can use it. I mean, it's not, we just don't have it for cash flow, which is not, you don't need that for planning purposes.
So one thing the audit could find is that, oops, we over reimbursed you. You need to pay us back. This part was not eligible, and that's where that
Deal-
money was.
Deal with that bridge when you get to it. Cross that bridge when you get to it. Something in,
I mean, we might
Jump
not
off
want to
that bridge when we get to it.
Better said.
You're giving us our
Maybe-
palpitations there.
Maybe we can keep part of the bridge.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm not saying all of it necessarily, but
Yeah.
I mean, to assume
You can
that
keep a
that they're
percentage,
going to
yeah.
claw back all of it, I think is not a
Right.
good assumption, because
Agree with that.
So could you do an analysis in case we do need to tap that during?
Yeah, I can see what the impact is.
Okay.
Are these audits performed by the auditors of public accounts? Is that who does it?
No, the state does it.
I mean, well, that's a division of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know someone there?
Well, as a state employee, I have had to respond to those auditors.
All right, we'll see what you can do. Amy, do you have my PowerPoint, and we can pull up at least the goals? For the-
Oh, yeah, I actually have that up in the email that you sent.
Okay. So these are the things, as I start looking at my PowerPoint, I don't want to say these are the Board of Finance goals unless you guys all agree with that. So I thought I'd check with you. These are similar to what we had before. Our our goal is to provide financial resources needed to maintain Simsbury's quality of life for its residents. That's kind of what we're in the business of, public service. Adhere to town fiscal policies. I assume the same assumptions we've used for the last 3 years. So reserves 15.5, debt service targeted 7 but not to exceed 8, tax collection assumption rate 98.5, health reserves 20 to 25%, and we just did the experience study assumptions on the 625 investment. Maintain Simsbury's AAA bond rating, strategic use of reserves and ARPA, database decision making, continue long-term planning, which I think Amy has really moved us very far along on that. Once adopted, budgets should be amended only when urgency requires. I got that from another town. I can't remember which town, but to that, I think our priority is if we have unanticipated, if we have grants that we can reasonably anticipate, let's go ahead and budget them during the budget process so that we don't have to do supplementals later. And let's make sure we're budgeting to the extent we can the increased costs that we're seeing. And one thing I think we should consider, and Amy, you can give us some guidance on that, is doing a contingency for cost overrides, perhaps in Town Aid Road. We could budget a contingency appropriation of Town Aid Road for public works of $50,000 that can be used if they need it only for cost overrides, unanticipated cost overrides, or something in the capital reserve in the 50 to 100,000 range, so they don't have to keep coming back for multiple supplementals. Is one thing to consider there.
This is very good. I like it. I think assumed up there is provide financial services, essential services and education in order to, that's assumed, to maintain somebody's quality of life for its residents. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it includes education for sure.
Education and basic services like roads and police and all that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because people forget that this is not a money-making business we're in. We're in a service business. And then hold the resulting growth in the amount to be raised by taxation and subsequent mill rate assessment to as modest a level as consistent with these objectives. And that I actually got from New Canaan. So thank you, New Canaan. That's one of their budget goals.
Does that assume that the growth means that the amount will grow annually?
It does assume that.
Yeah, so that, I have a problem with that a little bit.
The aspiration.
We could change
You
that.
could say any resulting growth.
Yes.
Hold
that
any
works.
resulting growth?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it should say as is consistent with these objectives.
Right. I did not show this to Bert in advance. Hold any.
No, and just any resulting growth. That means that it doesn't assume growth.
Right.
And it's
Are
not
you
necessarily
scoffing at me?
No, because it's not necessarily the result of this budget. What you're saying is any growth.
Yeah, well,
I need the words,
Yeah, no,
guys.
Growth doesn't necessarily come because of our budget.
Any resulting.
No, the point,
Any increase.
we're saying that if there is
taxation.
growth in the amount to be raised by taxation because the budget we're projecting is
That's right.
larger, then it has to be held to that level. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think hold any resulting growth says that.
We'll take care of your concern.
Oh, I see, hold any as
Okay.
opposed to any, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I will
Gotcha.
change that.
But make sure you do as is.
I'm trying to remember to write. I wrote it down. Whether I don't have my laptop with me, but I will make every effort to change that.
Mike can do it.
Oh yeah, Mike. So everyone's comfortable with that.
Yep.
With that change. I just wanted to make sure folks were.
Thank you.
Before
Nice
we
job.
go to the tri-board meeting, do you want to talk about something more specific than that last sentence?
Well, I don't think I don't even know how to say hold taxes to 1%. I think, do we have consensus? Well, tell me what you're thinking.
Something along those lines. I mean, we've kind of done both in the past of providing a guideline and not providing a guideline, and people haven't been happy with either. So
But isn't it obviously uneven? One year you got a Latimer Lane and the next year you don't.
well, no, I'm not saying that you'd pick a number forever, but for the coming year. I mean, last year we didn't provide a number, and both boards were sort of, well, you didn't give us a target. So, all right, so should we give them a target?
Well, I think scenario one, there's not really much of a choice, right? When you showed us, there's not gonna, I mean, the target is to come in lower than scenario one, because we're seeing tax increase.
Put it in perspective, you may want to extract what's been allocated by ARPA to give an idea of how much, how much the budget is going up, absent that amount, or what we've allocated to each board from ARPA.
In the operating budget.
Yeah.
I mean, most of ARPA, to Wendy's point.
Yeah,
is,
it's capital.
It's capital,
Yeah.
Just the two,
social workers.
and that was it.
Yeah, okay, so that's probably not helpful. Then.
So good job with that, Wendy. All right.
Amy, when we're all done here, can you send the scenario analysis to all of us so we can study it at home?
But I think, to Linda's point, I think we, do need to give some guidance, and the guidance is there's not gonna be a lot of tolerance for going above scenario one, and we'd like to get below scenario
yeah.
one, given what we're seeing right now. Is that the consensus where we are today? We'll keep an open mind because we don't have final numbers from Francine, we don't have the needs analysis from the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen. But just given what we know as of today,
That's what the goal is.
right, it's a goal.
It's a goal.
Was that the 2.5, 3.5?
Yeah.
And it's probably gonna be, for the Board of Selectmen the Board of Ed has less flexibility there because they're seeing population growth and they just had a huge union settlement, so it's gonna fall more heavily on you. But you have come in with $1 million in savings for 3 years in a row, so there is some capacity
There's a
there.
desire from the look at savings.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I just think, given that it is a reval year and that there's going to be a lot of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth, that we need to try to keep the
increases as low
increase
as
as
we can.
low as possible, because otherwise everybody with a home over $350,000 is going to be out with pitchforks.
Well, it's a hard year because a lot of people are seeing their net worth down this year, so it's a very, very hard year for folks. All right, so now let's get on to, are we good to move on? We have sort of a unspoken consensus, scenario one or lower.
Someone in the audience wants to be recognized.
For you and for Amy,
Yeah,
if I may, you're very generous in letting me speak. How do we get this message out as the departments are starting their budgets? Everybody's starting to work on this now to know that's gonna be a tight year.
We just
That's
during
true.
tribal
That's not the
Maria
purview of this board. I think we can
The
worry about
the
that later.
superintendent and the
I think I
town
felt like
manager.
this is the trouble. Okay, yeah, that's good, that's true.
yeah. We'll do that through the tri-board. All the department heads go through Amy in developing their budgets, so that's a message she can convey, that there's a concern there. She's looked at the numbers as well. The numbers are the numbers, they tell us what they are. And it will change as we get better numbers from Francine and we see the needs.
But the Board of Finance does not directly message to the public. That's Board of
That's right.
Selectmen and Board of Ed. Let's leave it for those boards to deal with.
I'm with that.
We'll get the
Doesn't
word,
mean
we'll
you
get the
don't get
word out.
stopped in the grocery
Can we
store,
go back
however.
to the first scenario, and what's that total increase in, I'm sorry, in
But
the,
yeah, the
in the
total
budget?
increase amount between the two boards, you mean?
No, just in that scenario one. Yeah, exactly, because I just forgot.
If it's 2.5 and 3.5, it's gonna
Oh, it
be
was actually, yeah, that's right, because it was,
3.5 is 70.
3-point-something percent, can't read 3.6% increase as opposed to a 1% increase in taxes.
so we're looking for both boards to come inside of that scenario one.
We're looking then to come in below that scenario because the.
Below,
Yeah.
like, because I think you mentioned 1%, did you not?
Mhm.
1% is probably,
Well, I mean,
Tax
I'd go so
increase.
far as say, we're gonna have to pay debt service with cash, so, well, not necessary, but I would say if it's 1, it might as well be 0.
so.
It's gonna be hard enough to keep the 1 is what I'm saying, but yeah, so I don't know how to think of guidance at 1 or 0, but I would say that the guide needs to be significantly inside scenario 1.
Right.
Mhm.
I think there's a consensus there,
Yeah.
looking at the impact on folks. As we get new numbers, Amy, if you get new numbers from Francine, definitely let us know, because that, I think what's gonna drive us are the numbers, as they should.
Mhm.
And if we get better numbers, and I imagine in the past, I mean, Wendy, I assume you don't wanna raise taxes by these dramatic amounts as well. Right, so I imagine there will be a strong consensus to get it as low as possible, because everyone has the interest of the taxpayers and will want to meet the needs, but in the most affordable way. And knowing that this is a very hard year for many families, we just, there was a housing analysis that almost 23% of our residents are housing challenged, housing burdened. So this will be an impact on that's one of, almost 1 in 4.
23%?
23%,
Will
shocking,
we bond in fiscal year 2023?
yes. We're gonna
Right.
go out to bond in March.
So is there an estimate in that debt service? Okay. So that will be, okay, gotcha.
That's
That
what-
includes Latimer Lane.
That's our
Yeah.
Latimer, that big hit.
That's where you can see the debt service goes from 6.3 to 8.3,
Yeah.
$2 million increase. We
Yeah.
planned for some of that, thank God. The cash for capital gets eliminated, so it softens that blow. It feathered it in, otherwise this would be a dramatic increase. So there's some of that. All right,
Thank you.
folks, comfortable with that for now?
Yeah.
What I'll do is, once I get my slideshow done, I'll circulate it to you guys. I know we can't caucus on it, so my Republican friends give feedback to Amy, not to me, but I'll get it to you guys, and you guys can give me feedback directly. But it's similar to what we've done in the past, and Amy and I are working on the numbers. Okay, if we can go to fiscal year budget information request.
Can I interrupt for a
Yeah.
second? If we used, there is no cash for capital assumed in
Right.
the coming year.
We zeroed it out.
Why?
Because last year we knew this cliff was coming. So we had capital needs that we needed to meet anyway. So instead of doing a huge $2 million increase and therefore a huge tax increase between the 2 years, we took care of capital projects last year to soften the incline in the mill
But
rate.
my point is, don't we have plenty of cash in the capital reserve fund? We could do more cash for capital. again.
Cash for capital is what we taxed for. That's not use of capital
Right.
reserves.
Oh, sorry.
So we're gonna
I
use-
misunderstood.
To the extent there is capital needs, it's all gonna have to be taken care of capital reserves, or we're not gonna be able to tax for any of it.
Okay.
And that's why we've been building up our capital reserves and why we use the conservative
Okay.
tax collection assumption
Yeah,
rate
I
and all
remember
that
that
stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, so going on to the fiscal year budget requests. We've seen this now a few times. I just wanted to go through, I did have a chance to talk with Amy, and most of them are under her purview and she can accommodate. She felt these were not hard, number of budget book pages, avoid acronyms, glossaries, summary of budgetary savings or offsets used, summary of all tax abatements, and list debt service and cash for capital on separate lines. We sometimes combine them, as to Derek's point, we really, especially with the increased borrowing costs, need to understand the impact of debt service at this point going forward. In the past, the draft budget document, which is what we post online, it's helpful for us to get an advance copy of that, because that's actually what we're approving. We did ask for, and this document is already, it doesn't have to be created, it's their base document, so just get that to us in advance with the fiscal notes. They have a fiscal note column, and just, the only thing that would be added was the changes the board of selectmen made, but those are usually less than 10. So minimal amount of work for that, but to get it to us as early as possible. The draft bond resolution language, last time we got it very late in the process and through no one's fault, no maliciousness or anything, but there was a change made, recommended by council that was not brought to our attention, that was substantive and that we weren't aware of. So that's the kind of thing we just need time to review it. And then the draft notice of referendum, which is the 2-page summary that goes out, or the 3-page, 7-page, I don't know how many pages it is, to see that in advance. And so Amy has that, just we understand it's still draft, but we should have that and the public should see it. So we'll get those. the cash for capital tab, it's gonna be zero this year, but to the extent we use it in the future to explain what it is, because sometimes it's just a number. The transfer tab, again, explain what that is and what it's used for, because members of the public, the Global Initiative on Financial Transparency, it's good to explain what it is. And Board of Education, we had just asked to use the same format that the Board of Selectmen use, so a column of prior year approved budget. They generally show us their amended budget. And then we'll post for ours the three things there. So it's basically not a lot of stuff, the capital improvement stuff, with Maria, Derek had asked that we add a cost line for contingency and project sheets. So we'll ask for that. That is fairly standard in government financial office. Recommendations, a column for the total cost of the project, so grants, so that we can understand the full cost. Rank capital or categorized by priority category. This I know is a perennial
Request.
tension and request, but it is a government financial officer's best practice, and it does help us sort of understand the categorization of what's happening. So to the extent we can get that, that would be helpful. In the description, link capital projects to master plans where applicable. We have lots of master plans. They are taken into account when they do it, but the public may not see the linkage. So if we could show the public the direct linkage, that would be helpful. Include estimated and projected start and completion dates for capital. Again, this is a government financial officers association best practice. If you look at Glastonbury and some of New Canaan, they'll do that. Include all funding sources for capital and separate line items. So sometimes in capital projects, we'll see combined capital reserve, general fund bonding, and it's all mushed together so you can't tell what. So just to separate those out. Budget known, reasonably anticipated grants, lots of preliminary grants or anything else that is reasonable, so it will help us avoid the 3% problem. And again, include a summary of capital grants applied for but not budgeted and an anticipated timeline for notification of awards so that we can be aware and plan for any supplementals that might be coming up or not budgeting for. Whether to budget, I did talk with Sean Aspen and he agreed that whether to budget capital grants is a policy decision for the boards to make, so we just need the information so that we can make that decision. And then indicate the number of years a project has been on the CIP. That's important to track because we want to get to a system where multiple boards have had multiple opportunities to review each capital project. And then indicate square footage and any changes to square footage for buildings or land acquisition so we have a full understanding of what's changing, and it will help us better evaluate operating costs. Again, these are all GFO or ICMA things. These are not like, oh, this is a crazy idea. These are standard things. So we'll talk to them. I know Maria had mentioned that she could accommodate a lot of those, and I'm going to meet with her tomorrow and see if there's any things, if there are any huge obstacles. We'll bring that back to us, to our board. The one thing that's not in here is performance measurements, which is standard if we're going to eventually apply for the Government Financial Officer's Best Budgeting Award. That is now required. New Canaan, if you guys want to take a look at how New Canaan does it, they do an excellent job with measurements. So it's worth thinking about. I don't think we're going to get that in this budget because it does take some time, but it should be a long-term goal. It's a best practice of GFOA, and would like to see that at some point. We do have some of those. Amy has some of those when we do our comprehensive annual financial report in the back. So we do some. They're not as robust as some of the top budgets in the states, and we can work to that. But I didn't put that in here this time because that is a lot of resources, and I think they're going to be short-staffed for a part of the time in the spring. So, but I want to keep that on people's radar.
So were there any changes to this from when you
No.
provided it last time? Because
No.
I think we talked, at least I had made the request that,
Oops.
and you, it's either or, but I just, in terms of ranking capital, I would prefer to rank capital as opposed to
I'll put it in.
categorize it. But
Okay.
again, that's just my preference. I would want to know what the number one priority is versus the number 2 and number 10, as opposed to high, medium, and low. It just really just holds the board's feet to the fire in terms of what they really want.
So would it be, I mean, one of the things, I was talking with Eric Wellman about this, and he said, you mean just for the current year? And I said, yes, you don't have to rank all the capital. For
Oh,
all
no,
the
no, no,
6
yeah,
years.
yeah, no,
So,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. No,
So
that was
should
my
I change
assumption.
that to rank capital
No,
for the
no,
current year?
I mean, as long as it's being openly discussed, you don't have to change it. It's rank or categorize, but my preference would be to
I think
rank.
everyone's preference is rank.
Okay,
Yeah. Is that correct?
Tough to do.
it is.
It
yeah.
is
Possibly.
It's a tough year. We're saying it's tough.
It is
We're not
tough,
saying
but-
it's, yeah,
But that's
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
that's the job. I mean,
Right.
there are many times the Board of Finance came to me and said, rank your capital.
Mhm.
And then they would fund as much as they could.
Mhm.
It's hard. It is hard, though. It's not it's certainly been done in the past. I believe Linda made me do that one year.
She wouldn't do that.
Oh, she did.
I'm so mean.
Oh, she did. But it's actually a good exercise to go
Yeah,
through
sure.
because it helps the public
It's
understand.
character building.
Well, there's gonna be limited capital.
Right. There's
So-
there's limited dollars.
It should be
You gotta
pretty
do
easy.
some priorities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's, all right. So can I have a motion then to approve these requests with the understanding that, we're not crazy people, and if there's something that comes up that they is a real hardship, we'll certainly listen to that, but these are our requests, and we're making them because we believe they're important.
With that understanding, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Then we have our approval of the minutes. I sent Amy some grammatical and just minor changes I did add to Art's point on the note, October 18th minutes, who made motions and who seconded them. If you'll recall, in the October meeting, we had neither SCTV film the meeting and we had no clerk. So Amy and I spent probably 6 hours writing these minutes.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Wow.
And so we could not remember who made which motion, so we had Linda make every motion and Art second every motion. So if anyone disagrees with that,
There's
you know.
there's an awful lot of houses making motions in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but we just had
It's
no idea.
fine. It's fine.
So,
I'm fine.
Yeah.
okay. So, and there are a few grammatical changes that I sent to Amy actually in all 3 minutes, but they were non-material. Do you agree with that, Amy? They were non-material.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did anyone have any others?
I was just gonna say, is it easier to just say that a motion was made and seconded and unanimously approved?
No, I think we have
You
to
have
say
to
it,
say,
yeah.
okay.
Especially
No
because-
passive voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be easier, yes.
Yeah, no, okay, no, that's me
So
not knowing the rules.
if anyone remembers it differently, you want to change that, we can do that. Wendy, I am going to ask you to stay afterwards because we need a hat picture and we need you to take the hat
Oh,
picture.
okay.
I'll move approval.
Sure.
We got hats.
Yes. We got,
Simsbury.
Should we sit?
Should
Should we
make
sit
make it
near
clear
them?
to the public that the hats are not in the budget.
Like we're holding the meeting with them on?
Let's approve the minutes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I move approval of the minutes.
All right.
Second.
and that's for all 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, all three.
And I second the
With the
motion.
minor changes,
Just,
grammatical changes.
you two are always doing this.
See, all right, Linda, that's why I did it.
If you'd
All right.
like to, Bert, if I may call you Bert, if you'd like to.
You always say that. Like, can he call you Bert or not?
All right,
It's-
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we have communications. That was just the building financial report, right, Amy? Is there anything there we should be aware of? We're saying you mentioned it in your
Yeah,
fiscal
it's just
report,
consistent
but
with
at the
what
law.
Oh, good.
I talked about that.
All right, I will take a motion to adjourn, but with the caveat that you must stay and get the picture taken with that.
Bert, would you like to move?
Well, I don't want to step on Art's toes.
We need someone to move and second adjournment, and it isn't going to be Art.
I yield
or I.
to the gentleman at the end of the line here, has something important to say.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.